Hello and welcome to the very first Wrestling Review podcast. My name's Craig and we are starting at the very beginning today. We're going all the way back to the very first ever episode of WWF Monday Night Raw. I just wanted to give you a little bit of background on myself. I started watching wrestling back in the mid-90s, watching here in the UK on Sky Sports, watching as and when I could, what we got on a Saturday morning. At the time I was sort of quite young, so I wasn't allowed to watch the late night episodes, so it was what we got on a Saturday morning was sort of my interaction with the world of wrestling at the time. And since then, obviously, being a big fan over the years, carried on watching through the Attitude Era, kind of drifted away a little bit, tried to get back into it, but never really did. Always wanted to go back and relive those glory years of the early days of watching it on a Saturday morning on Sky here in the UK. So what I thought would be a good idea is if we went all the way back to the very first episode of Monday Night Raw, start at the beginning, and watch them all in order and see what it was like. What I'm hoping to see is sort of a progression throughout the time as we go through of how it changed from the early 90s into the Attitude Era, potentially what happened after the Attitude Era, how did it become the PG era that we're in currently. And I just think it'd be really interesting to go back and watch each episode in order and see what was happening. Now, I'm not interested too much in what was going on behind the curtain and what was happening in the real world at the time. What I'd like to do is just review the product, what was happening on the show in each episode of Monday Night Raw. If wrestlers came and went because of real life things, that's fine, but how was that shown to the viewer? Was it explained well? Did we get a good storyline reason why someone suddenly wasn't there? Or was it just that that's it, they're not there? I just want to see what it was like all the way from the beginning. So we're going to start today with the very first episode of Monday Night Raw. Now, some of these I have watched before, some I've never seen. So some of these early ones I have never watched before. So it's going to be really interesting to go back and start at the beginning and see what I make of it, really. So let's dive in with the very first episode of Monday Night Raw. So here we go then. The very first episode of Monday Night Raw aired on January the 11th, 1993, and it came live from the Grand Ballroom at the Manhattan Center in New York. The commentators were Vince McMahon, Macho Man Randy Savage, and somebody called Rob Bartlett, who I have not seen of before. So we'll see what he's like. The show opens with some shots of New York City, and we start outside with Sean Mooney, and he introduces us to the show, and then we've got Bobby the Brain Heenan trying to get in. Sean tells him that his show is absolutely sold out, and there is no chance of him getting in tonight. We've got the siren blaring out, which I must say is possibly the most annoying start to any show I've ever seen. Absolutely awful. We get down to the ring where we see Vince, Macho Man and Rob, and they are hyping the show. They're screaming at the top of the voice, especially Vince here, trying to be heard over that awful siren. Hyping the upcoming matches we've got tonight. So we've got the Steiner brothers is one that Vince manages to mention, and just really hard to hear what they're saying from a viewer's perspective. That is awful, listening to that siren going off. The building looks really interesting. It looks very low budget, which I guess really fits well with the Raw theme that they're going for here for this new television product. So then we get our first match of the night, which is Koko B.Ware versus Yokozuna, who comes out with Mr. Fuji. Now, I must say I've seen Yoko before, and here he looks quite trim for Yoko, actually. He's looking pretty good. Very much just a squash match. At one point, Vince gets rather excited and shouts, "Go get him, Birdman!" Vince tells us here that Yoko is so far undefeated in the WWF and that he combines all of the martial arts, which I thought was rather interesting, that Yoko knows all of the martial arts. He's billed at being £505, here's Yokozuna, and Rob Bartlett calls him one big-butted Oriental, which I'm not sure how to take that, Rob, but thank you for that input. Throughout the match, we start something here that is going to carry on throughout the show, where one of the commentators will start by saying uncut, and then another will follow with uncooked, and another follows with uncensored. And it seems like they have a little bit of a skit going on between the three of them. They like to keep dropping this in now and again. So the match is, I say, a fairly standard squash match. To say it's the very first match on this new format on the first episode, it's okay. Yoko just looks big and bulky and immovable. Koko tries a couple of drop kicks, which does wobble him, but in the end, Yoko knocks him down, drops a big leg, drags him over to the corner, and hits the bonsai drop to get the win. We get a little Royal Rumble hype from the commentators then, and then we see a replay of Yoko doing the bonsai drop. Another Rumble promo video here now, this time saying that we're going to get Bret Hart versus Razor Ramon at the Royal Rumble for the WWF Championship. Now, I must say at this point, I am watching all of these episodes on the network, so there might be bits cut out, there might be bits missing. If there are any other bits that you know of that were taken out, please do let me know. Follow me on Instagram at TWRpod20 and let me know what have I missed. So we come back from what I assume was the advert break or a gap in the show of some kind, and we come back to see one of the Raw ring girls walking around in the ring holding up a card telling us that we are watching Monday Night Raw. Not something I've ever seen them do before, which was quite interesting and very different to see them doing something like that, having the ring girl there. We now cut to a pre-taped promo with Bobby the Brain Heenan talking about Narcissus and hyping the feud that he's got going on, I assume, here with Mr. Perfect. He's hyping how much better Narcissus is than Mr. Perfect and tells us that Narcissus will be unveiled at the Royal Rumble. One thing else to note with these, like I said, I'm reviewing what the show's like and what's going on, the storylines. One thing I want to kind of do is watch as though I haven't watched before and not know what's going to happen in the future. So again, I'm kind of looking at this as I'm a new viewer to Raw, so I want them to explain what's going on. I haven't explicitly been told here that we've got a feud between Bobby the Brain and Mr. Perfect, but I assume that's what's going on from that promo from Bobby Brain Heenan. It was quite okay. It was a standard promo, nothing too amazing. Kind of got me interested to see who this Narcissus is and what's that all about. So now it's time for our second match, which is the Steiner brothers versus two other people in the ring dressed all in black. They get the jobber entrance of already being stood there, and because Vince and Co on commentary are talking, it's really hard to hear the Fink announce who they opponents are for the Steiner brothers here. Now, a little bit later, Vince tells us that they are the Executioners, so it's good to know. At least I know now who the Steiner brothers are facing. Throughout the match, we get to see Doink, the clown, wandering around in the crowd, cutting away from the action in the ring. Rob starts calling him Dork the clown, to which Vince starts calling him Dork, and genuinely, I think, does seem to think that his name is Dork the clown, until Macho Man corrects Vince and he realises his mistake, that he has in fact been calling him Dork the clown. Throughout the match, the Executioners just seem really bad. They're just very sloppy. One of the Steiners whips them into the ropes and the Executioners just fall over. A hard clothesline from Rick, I think, starting to get a little bit annoyed with them here. A belly-to-belly suplex from Scott. Tag to another Executioner who comes in. Hard clubs from Scott again. A double underhook suplex. And then Steiner's set up for the tag team finishing manoeuvre. Bulldog from the top rope off of Scott's shoulders. And the Steiner brothers pick up the win. Far too short to be anything of a match. Steiner's there basically just to get a quick win. We cut back outside again where we see Bobby again. Now he's trying to get back in, but this time he's dressed in women's clothing, trying to get back into the arena. And Sean Mooney goes back over to ask him who he is, why he's trying to get in, and seems amazed that it's Bobby dressed up in drag and tells him that no, he will not be coming in. Up next, we're going to get an interview with Razor Ramon. And as we come back from what I assume was another break, we've got Razor now in the ring with Vince. Again, quite hard to hear. We've got a quiet promo from Razor. It's really hard to sort of hear him. I think the levels on the sound were just off a little bit. It does get a bit better as we go through the promo. Vince insulting Razor here, calling him a Johnny come lately at one point in this in-ring interview. Razor saying that he's caught up with Brett. Brett's been there for a long time, and Razor has caught up to him in only 8.5 months. They play a video of an attack on Owen Hart that Razor did, again at a previous taping. Now, again here we get audio from the pre-tape that's played over the live footage, so we can't really hear now what Razor's saying while he's in the ring. One thing I noticed at this point, Vince is wearing a bow tie and a tuxedo, and I don't know, it didn't seem to fit. We've got this WWF Raw, we've got this very first Monday Night Raw. The production budget looks low, it does fit, it looks raw and a little bit grimy, a little bit dirty, and then we've got Vince there in his little red bow tie. We've got a taped promo now from Tatanka, who's hyping the Headlock on Hunger promotion that the WWF were doing. Not entirely sure what that was about, but I think it's something that they seem to be putting a lot of weight behind. We get a few of those promos on the show. Next up, we've got an Intercontinental title match. We've got Max Moon versus Shawn Michaels. Again, talking over the ring announcement as Shawn comes into the ring. I've noticed at this point the crowd seem really quiet. They don't seem to be too enthralled with what's going on here. Lots of people just sitting around, whether they were not really wrestling fans, whether they were just asked to come in to see this new TV taping. I'm not entirely sure, but it just seemed a little bit subdued from the crowd here. A Let's Go Shawn's chant starts at one point. Rob Bartlett on commentary style starts talking about fake matches. He's just making up matches of who might be coming up later on in the show. Must say, not overly impressed with Rob's commentary on this one. Like I said, don't really know who he is, but he's not great. It doesn't seem like he knows exactly what's going on, but yeah, it makes for hard listening in places. We cut to a commercial break, and when we come back, Rob informs us that Shawn pulled a knife during the break, to which Vince quickly tells us, no, he didn't. We get another uncut, uncooked, uncensored from the three of them. Brilliant. Shawn and Marty at the Rumble is announced, and then Rob starts talking, doing an impression of Mike Tyson for some reason. Now, it was mentioned that he was pardoned by President Jack Tunney, so whether that was something that was going on at the time, I'm not entirely sure. But Rob carries on doing a Mike Tyson impression, to which Vince is asking him questions and talking to him. We cut away from the action again to go and have a look at Doink, who's now wandering around the outside of the ring, and Vince is still going on as though he's talking to Mike Tyson. At one point, Shawn looks directly into the camera from the ring and says that this face has broken so many homes. That's good to know, Shawn, that you are, at this point at least, a homewrecker, and quite happy to admit that. Roll up from Max Moon, nearly got a 2 count on Shawn. Headlock from Shawn. Elbows from Max. Slingshot Shawn over the top rope, which was quite impressive. I liked that. Max then jumps out onto the apron, off the top and onto Shawn onto the outside. Max then Irish whips Shawn on the inside and follows up with a spin kick in the corner. Close 3 count then from the cradle from Max. However, Shawn hits the super kick, which I guess at this point isn't his finisher, because Vince calls it a savant kick and Shawn doesn't instantly go for the pin. So we get a suplex then from Shawn, a 3 count, and Shawn gets the win and retains the Intercontinental Championship. Again, weird to hear Sherry Martel doing Shawn's music, a little bit different again. We then get a video hyping WWF Mania, where we get some children jumping on their parents' bed, I assume, and telling us that this is going to be available on Saturday mornings. We then get a little graphic telling us that still to come is The Undertaker versus Damien Demento. We now come back and we've got a Rumble report, which is apparently brought to us by IcoPro. You gotta want it. And this is brought to us by Mean Gene here, who's hyping up the Rumble. He's saying that Shawn versus Marty has just been announced and Sherry will be at ringside, but who is she going to be with? We then get a pre-tape promo where Shawn tells us that He's going to face Marty at the Rumble and again questions where will Sherry be, but he says that, like any woman, she's going to want to be in his corner. We then get a Marty promo, and Marty's calling it Marty Day when he gets what he wants. He then says that Sherry will be there with him. Mean Gene tells us that 30 of the greatest superstars in WWF will be in the Rumble, and he then goes on to explain the rules for us, and he runs down the entrants, including Ric Flair, Tatanka, IRS, Bob Backlund, Jerry the King Lawler, Mr. Perfect. We then get a promo from Mr. Perfect in the middle of Mean Gene telling us who's in there. Perfect tells us that everything in his life is perfect. We go back to Mean Gene to carry on telling us some more entrants, including the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, Crush, Rick the Model Martel, Yokozuna. We then get a Yokozuna promo, although all the speaking here is done by Mr. Fuji. Standard Yokozuna promo, really, although he doesn't shout bonsai at the end, which I was a little bit upset by. We then go back to Mean Gene, who tells us that there's also in the Rumble going to be a Macho Man, Papa Shango, Earthquake, the Berserker, the Undertaker, Carlos Colon, Tenryu, El Matador, Typhoon, both of the Head Shrinkers, and Jim Duggan. We then get a Jim Duggan promo, and he says that there are no friend, all foes. He's not going to guarantee that he wins, but he is going to give 110%, which I suppose, what more could you ask for? Mean Gene then tells us that the winner will get a championship match at WrestleMania 9. And at the Royal Rumble, the main event is going to be Bret Hart versus Razor Ramon. We cut to outside again, where we see some people queuing up, apparently to get tickets for next week. And we see Bobby Heenan clearly now dressed up again, wearing a big fake beard and hat. He's saying that he's Rob's uncle and that he needs some tickets to get in to see the show tonight. Sean Mooney again looks shocked that it's Bobby Heenan. And then we cut back inside where we've got a graphic telling us tickets are on sale for the next few shows. So we've got Monday, January the 18th and Monday, February the 1st. And then a number we can call to get some tickets. We get another ring girl walking around. And again, we are uncut, uncooked and uncensored. But they now get it in the wrong order. So then do it again to get it in the right order. We get a look back at WWF Superstars taping, and we see Kamala now getting pushed around by two people. Slick comes running down to the ring to stop him getting pushed around, and he hits a man in a mask. Kamala slaps his belly and hits the men pointing at him, and then chases them off. Now, like I said, I do know who these people are. It's Harvey Whippleman and Kim Chi here with Kamala, but it would have just been nice if I'd been told that. Again, as a fan, just watching this very first episode, maybe I've tuned in just to see what all the fuss was about, if this has got a lot of hype in the TV, that maybe I'm a new fan coming to WWF. It would have just been nice to have been told what exactly was going on, rather than just everything being assumed that I know. We get back to the arena and we are now ready for our main event of the evening. We get The Undertaker with Paul Bearer, and he is facing Damien Demento. Damien's in the ring when we cut back, and the Fink tells us that he is from the outer reaches of your mind. It's an interesting place. I've not heard that one before. So the Undertaker comes out, and he's already stood in the aisleway, just sort of kind of loitering, waiting to make his entrance, and comes into the ring. And Rob then says, "Get your hair out of your face. You have such a pretty face." Not really the reaction I would expect of somebody seeing the Undertaker come into the ring for the first time, but there we go. That's what Rob decided to go with. Vince thanks someone for allowing Rob to be with them this evening. I'd rather they hadn't, and we had Bobby the Brain on commentary, because I have decided I'm really not a fan of Rob Bartlett's. Sorry, Rob. Damien squares up to the Undertaker, but starts talking to himself, and he doesn't seem too fazed by Taker. He's not scared of the Undertaker, so he decides to punch him in the face. The Undertaker, though, responds by Irish whipping Damien into the corner, gets on the armlock, twists it, and here we go. The first chance we get to see the Undertaker climbing to top rope, doing the walk, and crashing down with the arm across the back. Into the corner, and a choke by Taker, a whip and a boot into Taker's face from Damien. Damien now flying shoulder into Taker and takes him down. Taker actually flat on his back there. We're told at this point that we're going to have an interview next week with Bret the Hitman Hart. We've got Mr. Perfect, Papa Shango, Ric Flair versus El Matador, all coming up next week. I don't know, I find it a little bit surprising, I guess, that on the very first episode of this new weekly television series, you haven't got your WWF champion. So Bret Hart, not on the show tonight, apparently. He's going to be here next week. So, yeah, maybe the idea was get people to watch tonight and then they'll want to tune in again for the next one and start building that fan base. But to me, I would think, here we go, first one, throw everything at it. Get Bret Hart on there and get him in front of our audience. He is the WWF champion. At this point, we get a tombstone from The Undertaker and the 1, 2, 3. Vince invites us now to join in next week, where apparently we're going to have a steel cage match between Woody Allen and Mia Farrow. And they even put a graphic up to show us that this is going to be the match next week. Suspect probably not going to be. After the match then, we get Doink the Clown stood at ringside with Vince and giving a bit of an interview. Doink says that it only matters if he laughs. Crush wanders over, who again seems to have just been stood loitering, and Crush gives us an interview saying that if Doink tries to touch people again, he'll have something to say about it. So I have no idea what's been going on, but we'll leave it at that. Doink decides to squirt Crush in the eye with a water pistol. We get a bit of chasing around the ring, and at this point Doink rolls around on the floor laughing as Crush gets inside the ring. Yeah, that was it. We cut back to the outside, and once more we've got Sean Mooney and Bobby the Brain, and this time Sean tells Bobby that it's okay, he can go in now. Bobby runs up to the door, and we fade to black. So that was it. That was the very first episode of Monday Night Raw. It was okay. Not bad for a first ever episode, I guess. Not the best. Yeah, I will tune in again, I think, on the back of that. I suppose, considering what else there was available at the time, that was something quite different, I guess. It was live as well, which might have been quite a draw. Certainly not the best I've seen, but yeah, I'll tune in again and see what happens. So I guess at this point, I would say the best match of the night was probably the Shawn Michaels Max Moon outing for the Intercontinental title, just because it was the longest match. Everything else was just really short. There was lots of promos, lots of pre-taped, lots of hyping for the Royal Rumble, which I guess is important. It's the next big pay-per-view, and they're using this new weekly live television show to hype that. But yeah, it was not bad. So that was it, the very first episode of Monday Night Raw. Hopefully you enjoyed that. It wasn't the worst hour of wrestling I've ever watched. If you'd like to, please do give me a follow on Instagram at TWRPod20. And if you could, please like and subscribe, give me a review, help me get some more listeners as we're just starting out here. And we'll see you next time for the second ever WWF Monday Night Raw here on the Wrestling Review Podcast.